Okay, well, welcome everybody to the third day of SEO week. I'm with my good friend Rebecca Gill of Web Savvy Marketing. The first 2 days have been outstanding. So many good questions and so many good answers by Rebecca that she's been able to field from the chat room. So this is day 3. We're going to be talking about keyword planning and focus and strategy. And I think as a someone who has benefited from Rebecca's experience and expertise, this is the heart of like her awesomeness, is talking about keyword research and focus and planning, because she kept trying to put the brakes on us and did a very good job when we want to jump ahead in the process and start fixing stuff. But this is where I think she really shines. So Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you today, and thanks so much for, again, this week has been awesome.
Thanks, Corey, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. I know it's right before the holidays and you've got lots of things going on, but I definitely appreciate you giving attention to the webinar series. Your interest and your great feedback so far has been very welcome. Today I want to talk about keyword research and planning and how that kind of weaves into the website and taking it forward. And as Corey indicated, it is really important. And as I worked through some SEO work with iThemes, I did put the brake on the process because Corey, God bless him, wants to jump in, and I kept pulling him back because you really do need to have some strategic focus and a plan before you move forward. When I started SEO well over a decade ago, I'll tell you that I didn't have it then. I was like most people, where I just took keywords and content. I kind of just threw them at the website from afar and hoped that they sticked, and you just would kind of sit back and wait to see what happened. And while that may have worked semi-good years and years ago, it still didn't work that great then, and it really doesn't work that well now because the search engines have gotten so smart and so specific on what they want to see, and there's so much competition now on the internet that you really do have to have some strategy and some planning and really good focus to be able to move forward with your internet marketing campaigns and making sure that you are showing up on page 1 of Google or Bing and people can find you. So if you don't like this kind of approach, you're going to struggle through today, but I hope that you sit through it with me, and I hope that you get to the end and you see the thought process that I go through, and you do see the value, and you can implement that in your own process, whether it be for your own website or for that of your clients. Okay, so as we jump in today, I have my very first rule, and I try to do a couple of rules on today's presentation, and one is really important, and it's called don't be greedy with selecting keywords. I've thought this in the past, and I wrote a blog post probably 6 months ago, and it was when I was working with an SEO client who I ended up discontinuing the relationship with, and the reason is he wanted to be greedy. He wanted to go after every single possible variation of the keyword. Plurals, non-plurals, singulars, slight, changes in the phrase, and he knew that he had to have, 1 or 2 keyword phrases per piece of content. So his idea was to just create lots and lots of variations of that content and try to take that approach. And they had done it, years ago, and guess what happened is he had a lot of low-quality content that was written by an SEO consultant, and it ended up getting him in trouble with the search engines. He was faced with penalties, and he was faced with manual penalties, to the point that when he came to me with that, I said, first and foremost, we got to get you out of this box that you're in. And I referred him out to somebody who specifically works with manual penalties and fixing the errors of his old SEO consultants. And then we worked, we started to move forward with a good process of, strategy and keyword planning. But when we could not see eye to eye on the keywords and the fact that he wanted to have all of these versions, and I knew it wouldn't work, and I could see him slipping back into his habits that got him in trouble, it's when I disconnected our relationship when I worked together, because you can't be greedy with keywords. If you try to go after singular and plural and slight variations, especially if these are competitive keywords, it's not going to happen. You won't do anything well, you'll fail at everything. So you really do have to be specific with what you're doing and be targeted, and we're going to talk through that today. I have a formula for keyword research and mapping, and it's really, really important. And when you think about, when I talk about strategy and I talk about having focus, that's what it boils down to, is solid keyword research, solid analysis, and very solid mapping of that within your website or blog. And it really boils down to kind of 10 steps that I do for my first portion of it, which is the keyword research. On Monday, I mentioned creating a seed list of keywords. So this is just basically a list of all possible permutations that you would have for phrases or singular keywords that would be applicable to your blog or your website. And they're things that your customer or your potential customers or readers would look for, and not necessarily what you think that they're going to look for. And the best thing to do this is just to, take time, and it's not an hour, it's days or 2 weeks, and just start documenting this list of keywords for everything that you think you might show up in search, or you could potentially show up in search. And we talked about competitive analysis yesterday with some of the free tools, and I took you through some of my favorites. We talked about SEMrush and Moz and its toolbar, and looking at the source code of competitor websites. Looking at your own Google Webmaster Tools account, your Now Search Console, and your analytics, and looking at what Google's suggesting in the search box, all of those are places to find these seed words. And the more you start to open your vision to them, the more that you're going to see keywords are really everywhere. I made a joke one time on Twitter that my sixth sense is keywords. I don't see dead people, I see keywords everywhere, and I can't help it because I've been doing this for so long. But what that allows me to do is create a really good list of seed words. And when I'm working with either on my own website or with a client, I start with a seed list of like 400 to 500 keywords that I then start to use and reduce that down and use the Google Adwords tool to really fine-tune that. So this is the process that I go through. I look at my website, I look at Google's Search Console, which we looked at yesterday. I look at Google Analytics to see what's showing up there. The suggestions within Google, competitor websites, and I start to create this list, right? And as I go through that list, and don't worry, I'm going to come back to those other 10 points. As I start to develop that list, I'm creating variations. And what I'm doing is I'm controlling my destiny. Because my rule number 2 is don't rely on Google. If you take 10 keywords, for example, and you put them in the AdWords Keyword Planner tool, Google's going to give you back them, but they're also going to, the search engine is going to give you a list of keywords, but they're all going to be focused on pay-per-click. They're going to be search terms that have high volumes and that people will pay for ads for. They're not going to be really what might resonate with your potential visitors. So you can't rely on Google to brainstorm for you. You have to brainstorm your own. And it is fairly easy to do once you get yourself in that mindset. Brainstorming keywords I've got some sources, so start with your own ideas. Start writing them down or drop them into an Excel spreadsheet or a Word file, whatever works for you. Start doing that, right? I don't care if you got notes on your phone or your iPad and your mobile and you think about it in your car. Put them down somewhere so that you don't lose it. So start with your own list and then start looking at manual variations. So it could be consultant or consulting or developer or developers or designers or whatever your market is. You think about those variations. You're going to struggle at that at first. The first couple times that you do it, you will struggle. And then all of a sudden it's going to click what you're doing. It'll be much easier when you do it the next time for a client or the time after that. When I work on manual variations, what I do is I typically take 10 core keywords that are important, or even 20, and I drop them into Excel. And then I repeat that a number of times, and then I use in the next column over what that variation might be, so I augment it with another word or phrase. And then there's a function in Excel that you can do that will merge those two columns together, and it's a very quick way to get a very large list of all different kind of versions of the same phrases. And those are important because what you think people are going to search on and what they actually search on are generally not the same scenario. So I do like to have that kind of structure when I'm doing my seed list, because it does help me get a lot of variation. So another place that I look at is emails I get from prospects. I don't do a lot of PowerPoint presentations for people or reports, but when I work with clients, what I ask is if they have a sales team, I ask them to give me their reports and presentations, because what that does is they may not think of the words to give you, but when you get the presentation, you can actually see them in the PowerPoint they're given in their sales talks and their on-site meetings to close business. Which that's a great source if you're working with clients. I mentioned the Google Search Analytics tool, which we looked at yesterday, Google Analytics. We're going to plug information into Google Adwords, into the keyword planner to get information back. Search suggestions in Google and related searches at the very bottom of the screen are great areas. Google Trends. Bing Webmaster Tools is also a place. Again, we don't ever talk about Bing very much, but they do have a lot of good information. I go through the competitors' websites and I look at their visual content, right? I scan the content because even though they may not have focused keywords for pages, it will be within their pages. They just may not know enough to create a page or a piece of content around a given phrase. So scan their contents, particularly the home page, their main product or service pages or solution offerings. Even if they have industries or products within the store, scan all of that visually to see what will jump out at you. You can look at their HTML sitemaps that they have for visitors, as well as their XML sitemap. You can deep dive and get a good list of their pages. There's a little tool that I didn't put on here, but I do use. It's called Dino Mapper. My friend Kareem turned me onto this, and it's a great tool, and I do subscribe to it with a monthly fee. They do have a free version, but what this will do for you is you can put a URL in, and it will go create a sitemap of a competitor website for you, or anybody's website for that matter. And it is fairly reliable and fairly good, so it does give you some really, really good information, because you might not be able to physically easily get to a competitor's page at a deep level, but this tool can do that for you, and it will go out like 7 levels. It's a wonderful tool. And again, that's called Dino Mapper. I also look at competitors' meta titles and descriptions. We talked yesterday about looking at their using meta keywords, which I don't recommend unless you're in the Asia Pacific region, but a lot of people do, and it's really good information on potential keywords. And then you can look actually in the Google's index just by putting site : and then a URL to find what pages are showing up. And just by scanning the titles of the pages, those are good keywords as well. And then just some of the tools we looked at yesterday are also good places. When you are done with going through all of that different data and those data points and sources, you can easily have 400, 500, 1,000 keywords, which is way more than what you had when you started, right? So then I bring them in, and I'm going to drop them into the Google AdWords Keyword Planner tool. And I'm having a screenshot of it in case no one that's listening has used it before. In this example that I have in the screenshot, I just put in one phrase, ERP software, because we were talking about ERP software yesterday when I was picking apart my old industry. And it shows me at the top that this is right here, this is the one that I put in, and then it starts to give me variations, and it will give me, I think it's 800, it will give you at a time, which is really good, and you can sort this by the different columns and look at things like the average searches per month. This could be locally, it could be an international level. I give competition a little bit of credit when I'm looking at it, but not much, because that is pay-per-click competition, but I do look at the suggested bid. And one of the reasons why I do is because when you can see very similar terms like this one, which is 50,000 hits and the pay-per-click bid suggestion is $11, versus this one, which is higher, right? So it's 10,000 more searches per month, but the bid is quite lower. So that starts to be an indication to me of what might be a better converting term versus something else. So I take those, into account when I'm actually, starting to build up that list. Okay, so when I create my entire seed list, again, it's in Excel, I'm going to go through and clean that up, right? So I'm just dropping things in that I see. I will first remove out any branded keywords. That's number 2 on my list. And you're probably wondering, why do I want to do that? A branded keyword would be your product name. It would be your company name. In Corey's example, it would be iThemes. I don't want to try to optimize for iThemes because Google already knows that's who Corey is, right? I don't need to do that. I'm going to take out any product names like Backup Buddy because, again, Google knows that's where you find backup buddy. I'm going to be more focused on something else. So I'm first going to do that. I also take out any duplicates, because if you're at a level of having 400 to 500 keywords or more, you are going to have duplicates on that list. And again, if you're doing this in Excel, there is a function in Excel or a feature where you can do an advanced sort, and then you can take out your duplicates by copying into a new column. This will save you a significant amount of time, and when I figured that out years and years ago, oh, I loved Excel, because it does help with this process, and you're going to use that more than one time. Once I have my keyword list cleaned up, I'm going to import it into that the AdWords keyword planner tool that I just showed you a screenshot of. Google's going to cap you on how many you can import, right? So if you have a large seed list, you're going to have to break that up into batches. And so it might be, 3 different files that you're going to use to import. But what will be nice about that is once you bring that in, you're going to get a lot of good data back, like that data we were just showing you, and that was the pay-per-click, the searches per month, competition, that type of thing. And Google will even start giving you groups of data based on how you view that data inside there and when you export it, which can help with your analysis as well. So I'm going to, because I had to break that up, my seed list into multiple files, I'm going to get multiple files back from Google. So I have to consolidate those into one Excel report. And your eyes are probably glassing over at this point because this is so entirely boring. And yes, this step is really, really boring, but I promise you it will be very worth it in the end. Once you have the consolidated report, again, you're going to have to check for duplicates. Again, you're going to have to remove some branded terms, and we are doing this again because somehow they sneak back in. And then you're going to have to look through the report and remove words that are just wrong. And by wrong words, I mean like spelling errors. It kills me that the AdWords tool gives me those back, even though they themselves tell you don't optimize for it, right? So Google doesn't want you to optimize for spelling errors because they want you to write content with quality content, which would require actual words that are spelled right. So, and if you have misspelled words on your website, it degrades the authority of your website. So we don't want that. We remove them. And another reason I've had clients fight with me on number 9 is you don't need to optimize for misspelled words, because when you type in that misspelled word, Google will actually come back and it will give you the right spelling and it'll show you results for the right spelling. So know that it's not even necessary. And when your client fights you on it, fight hard back, because it is the wrong thing to do to try to optimize for those. Okay, so we've cleaned up our spreadsheet for incorrect spelling errors. Now we're just going to remove things that are going to be outside your target demographic or market. And it's hard to give you an example because those vary by industry and my website, but they definitely, absolutely do exist. And it just could be that it's incorrect. And I do have an example of what I'm going to show when we get to a further slide. Okay, so rule number 3. Keywords should equal your customer's verbiage and should not be industry jargon. Because like we in WordPress tend to have technology terms that we use, we tend to use jargon that nobody else understands. And I say I'm nerding out, and I don't even realize I'm doing it, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I gave an example, I think on Monday, of the child theme, right? If you're a WordPress developer or consultant, you understand what a WordPress child theme is, or you understand what a framework is. But clients or prospects, a lot of times they don't. In fact, most of our clients, they have no idea what a child theme is, they don't know what a framework is, and they don't care. What they want to know is that we're going to build them a great website. It's going to be, optimized. It's going to be designed for their end user, and it's going to be up to modern coding standards. That's what they care about. So as you are looking at your potential keywords, that's something that you need to keep in mind and be mindful of and take a step back. And even if you have to hand that spreadsheet over to somebody else that's a normal person and not the nerd like we are, and have them look for it, it would be worth the time to do so. A couple of reminders and things that we want to keep in mind as we're going through this process. And I'm saying this one again because it really is important. Don't optimize for brand search terms. Google knows who this is. I fight with clients with this all the time. Number 2, again, don't optimize for spelling errors. It degrades the authority with Google. Number 3, this is a huge one. When you're using that AdWords tool, it's going to give you, and you put in like your variations of keywords, it is going to give you back instances where it shows 0 search volumes. This drives me crazy because I know it is wrong. I have literally taken data and phrases from Google Search Console and Google Analytics, and I know traffic has come from Google search with a given phrase to a client site. I plug that into the AdWords tool and it comes back and it gives me a 0, even though I know the client's getting traffic from it. So you have to make sure that when you see that 0 in that tool, you take it with a grain of salt, and you know it may or may not be accurate. And I don't create a ton of pages or a ton of content for 0 search terms, but I definitely do take them to account, specifically if they are that's something that's very tailored and very targeted towards what the client or myself does. Okay, low search volumes. When you work with a client specifically, they want to always go after that search volume that's 60,000 searches per month. And they don't want to go after anything that's 100 searches per month. But here's the thing to know. Low volume searches are wonderful. The reason is you can score in them easy. They make great blog posts. They are very much easier to rank on than something that has very high volume. And when you start to add those up together, if you add 10 pieces of content that have 100 searches per month, guess what? That's 1,000 searches. And if it's very targeted to what you do, that's wonderful search traffic. And it's better than having something that's generic that's 60,000 searches per month. That's a hard sell with clients, and it's something that you just have to be adamant about and let them, and get them to understand that you're guiding them this way because it is for their own good. Low volume searches and that type of content help support cornerstone content. So cornerstone content being something that's a very strong page that has a very predominant and highly searched for keyword. You can use that lower volume content to link over there and produce those inbound links that help the authority of that destination page. And then another reason is that low volume search content provides fresh content to the website as a whole, which is important to Google and it's important to users. So keep those in mind. Don't discount them. And in fact, when I do have clients look at the website search terms for relevance, I make them ignore search volumes. And sometimes if I know I'm going to have trouble with it, I actually just hide it on the spreadsheet so they can't see it yet, because I know that I don't want them to stumble over it. Okay, so another thing to remember is that the pay-per-click dollar value should be used only as a guidance to know whether there's some type of insight you can learn from those lower volume searches and those higher dollar pay-per-click ad prices, to see that those are probably really good converting phrases and they're ones that you should take special note to. And I do keep them in there for that factor only, because it does provide some intelligence. Other than that, like I said yesterday, I think pay-per-click is cocaine for marketers and I completely ignore it. Number 6 is, as you work through these phrases, think about where you could really apply the content, right? So as you have your list of keywords, you need to start thinking about, and the earlier that you do this, the better off you are, because it will help do brainstorming for when you're going to map this to the website. Where could you use some of these keywords? It can be really strong product or service pages, which I call cornerstone pages, or really long pieces of content. It can be supporting pages. It can be products that you're selling, whether it be like in WooCommerce or iThemes Exchange, blog posts, training or resource materials, white papers or ebooks. There's so many different variations of content within a website. Don't just think standard pages when you're looking at keywords and you're thinking about where you might be using them in the future. Number 4 is pick your battles. You can't win on every keyword phrase, so don't waste your time trying. This goes back to don't be greedy with keywords, right? And it's a slight variation, but I'm saying it again because it's really important. You can't win on something that's 150,000 searches per month. It's not worth the battle, right? You could win if that's what you dedicated all of your time to and you let go other keywords. But in most cases, it's not going to be worthy of your time and effort because it's most likely a generic phrase that isn't closely tied enough to your target demographic and the product and services that you sell. So as you're looking through keywords, pick your battles. Okay, so my site mapping formula, I have some 13 steps that I go through, and I'm going to show you an example of a spreadsheet, and it's in the presentation, so you'll have it as a takeaway after we go through these 13 steps. So as I go through the columns that I'm putting on the spreadsheet, don't panic, don't feel like you got to do a lot of notes taking. You're going to see an example of this in a couple of slides. So when I have those keywords and I have the output from the Google Adwords tool, right, and I get them in my consolidated spreadsheet, I'm going to add a new column in there, and it's going to be for relevance score. And this is either going to be for me with my own website, or this is going to be for my clients. And I just tell the clients to do high, medium, low, or none. Years ago, I used to do like a number scale of 1 to 10, and it got really confusing for the clients and myself. You felt overwhelmed trying to have all those different variables. So save yourself some anxiety. Just go high, medium, low, or none. High means it's very relevant to your target market and audience. Medium, it's fairly relevant. It's not as important as those high volume keywords, but it is still of relevance. And then low is it's still semi-relevant, but not nearly as important as the high and the mediums. And again, this is related to the keyword itself and how it relates to the people coming to your website or blog. It is not related to any search volumes or any other data point. And you do that first, and when I send the spreadsheet over to the client, that's the only thing I ask them to do is just score it for relevance for me. And I have a column there if they want to put any notes or not, and then I have them send it back to me. So once I get that data back, I'm going to sort the spreadsheet for the relevance, right? So I'm going to have all the highs grouped together, all the mediums grouped together, and all the lows grouped together. If we have a small spreadsheet of only 100 or 150 keyword phrases, which can happen when you have a small business in a local market, I keep them all together in the same spreadsheet. If I'm dealing in a more competitive environment and I have a national client or an international client, like a mid-market or an enterprise level, you're going to have potentially thousands of keywords. At that point, I break them up into tabs within the spreadsheet so it's not overwhelming. And I always know if I start to feel overwhelming after doing this for 10 years, the client's really going to feel overwhelmed. So I try to make it as easy as possible. So all I do is just I have a tab for high, a tab for medium, a tab for low, and a tab for none, and I segment those out so we can focus at one thing at a time. And if you have that many phrases, you don't need to have them, you don't need to worry really about the low because you're going to have so many good ones in the high bucket that you can just really focus on those. Okay, so after I have those segmented out into my spreadsheet via tabs if needed, I start with the highest relevance. I want to start there because in a lot of situations you've got enough keyword meat and keyword opportunities that you don't need to look at anything else. Let's just focus there. So what I do is I create a new column and I mark it content URL. And this column is going to be a painful process for you because, as I say in step number 6, you actually have to start looking at keywords and then mapping them to a URL. That's where they're ranking right now or where you have appropriate content that could be matched up. And I was actually doing this process this morning, and I had round 2 keywords with a client. He sent it back to me, and he went and put in a bunch of URLs. And when I went to go spot check some of them, I realized that they were where he thought things should rank, but it wasn't necessarily what was actually ranking right now or really what should be the case. So I am going through at this process, and I'm probably 40% through of a 200-row keyword list, and I'm looking them up one by one on Google and using their Search Console data to be able to figure out where things are ranking right now so we can decide if that's the right place to rank or if we need somewhere else to rank. It is painful. I'm not going to lie to you. It is boring. It is mind-numbing. But it is really important that you do it because that makes sure that you stay focused and it makes sure that you're not going to be duplicating efforts or competing against yourself or trying to shift something that doesn't need to be shifted. Sometimes Google gets in its head that it's going to rank a keyword for a given piece of content and you can't change it. You just got to let it ride. And what you do is you roll with it. You optimize that piece of content for it. I ran into it before, and particularly in the days of ERP, and by rolling with it is how you win. I've tried to shift it sometimes, and it's almost impossible. So that's why that number 7 is there. And when you do it and you get really frustrated, just remember I did warn you that you weren't going to like that process. Once I have that process done, though, now I can start sorting my spreadsheet by the existing content, and I can see where one piece of content might be ranking for multiple phrases already. So then I can start optimizing that piece of content better for those phrases so we can increase our rank. Or if it's not ranking well, I can shift it so that it's going to, we're reassigning that. The next step that I go through is I create a new column called Focus. Focus means, do I want to focus on this keyword moving forward? And I'm going to explain to you in a minute on an example of where I would want to focus on it. The reason you're having all of these columns and the reason we're using things like Focus is so you can actually use the spreadsheet to resort it to really make your job easier. So that's especially true when you're working with clients, because clients will want to sort it too. So discourage your clients from color coding things, because then you can't actually sort data and it makes it challenging on you. And I have gotten spreadsheets back where I've asked people to please go forth and rank things for relevance for me, and what they did was, instead of going high, medium, and low, they gave me color codes for everything, and I had to go back and do it. That's like pick your battles with keywords. It wasn't worth my time to go, or the ill will it would cause my client to say, no, you did this wrong. I just went and filled everything up in the data column so I could actually sort it. So number 10, we're going to review the list of phrases and decide which ones we want to put on the website or the blog. We're going to assign those as focused. And then I also like to start kind of at this point saying whether it's new content, it's old content, and really start fine-tuning that. You want to keep phrases that you are really confident in. And if you're semi-confident in something, you can mark it as such. But the goal of this is to narrow down what's winnable, right? And to know what's winnable, you're going to have to go look at the search engine results page again. And just like before, when you were doing it with step number 7, this can be very painful too. And at first, when you do this process, so we go in and we put in a search phrase into Google and we see who shows up on page 1. You're going to sit there and you're going to kind of stare at it with a blank look in your face, because you're not going to really have a good idea of if you can win or not. But if you go back through some of the core concepts of optimization, which would be like the URL, the meta title, the meta description, match the focus phrase that you put into the search box, and the content seems like it's relevant to that topic and it's not off topic, and the intent is right, that will help you start to narrow those down to say whether or not you could potentially win, right? Because you will see errors, and we saw some of those yesterday when we were looking at the Epicor site. Some other things that you can just look at is the strength of the domain, right? Because some domains are going to have more powerful strength than others, whether it be new or old or small or large or a big brand with lots of clout other than just content. Those are factors you need to take into account as well. But again, you can beat the big brands by just doing things the right way, because a lot of times they lose sight of it. But all of that goes into your data and whether or not you want to focus on that phrase and whether you feel confident that you can kick off somebody off of page 1 in Google. When I go to decide what content I'm going to focus on, I like to say whether or not it's going to be a page, a product, or a blog post. And I do this with clients too, right? So when we're in the keyword analysis phase, I'm going to go through and say, okay, these would be great product pages or service pages. These are lower volume, different type of intent. These would make great blog posts. And what you're doing for your clients is you're not only answering questions for them today on what can be the sitemap, you're giving them information for what they can use after launch. You're creating a content calendar for them, which they're very thankful for, because you've given them direction and you've given them a path that they can implement on their own, whether you're optimizing for them or not, but you empower them. Okay, so I said I was going to give an example of my spreadsheet. This is a very minimized example, but it's something that I can put into a PowerPoint presentation so that you can download and have with you. This goes back to our example yesterday of Epicor. So these are actual keyword phrases that came off of that Google Adwords screen I showed you before. I put in ERP software, and here's some of the things that I get back. And I use these examples purposely. So the first one in our list is ERP. It has monthly traffic of 550,000. Now, most clients are immediately going to say, I want that keyword. But guess what? it is not very focused. It could be anything under the sun, so I don't necessarily go after it because, I mean, A, it's not specific enough, and B, it's going to be really hard to win. So while the relevance score here is high, I'm going to mark it as a no for focus. Oh, and I just realized I have an error. I got my URL in the wrong row. This little guy, just for reference, should be down here. My apologies for that. Okay, so the next line is ERP software. It's the one I put in. Do I have an existing page? Yes. My URL should be down in this row to illustrate that. This is one, these are actual, the volumes in the pay-per-click is actually really from Google. So the pay-per-click was $10, and I did have an existing page. It's something that I want to go after, and I'm going to designate that as a page as opposed to a post or a product or something else. ERP system is a phrase that is very similar to ERP software. People interchange it. To change them. This is where I say pick your battles, right? It is going to be difficult to go after both ERP software and ERP system. Back in the day, I opted for ERP software for sites, although I have clients that, and my old site was actually optimized and scoring on page one for both. But the reason I would pick software over system is ERP system can also be used for ERP systems, which is still grammatically correct. And that makes it kind of more challenging to rank on this one and really get hits versus the ERP software. So I found ERP software much easier to focus on. The other reason is look at the pay-per-click. $10 or almost $11 versus $8, even though the lower ones got higher volume. So again, that's an indicator to me that the ERP software might be better. So I mark this one as no, we're not going to focus on it, and I start marking stuff as NA. The next one, ERP softwares. This may look like a good phrase to you, but I know that that's grammatically incorrect, right? So foreign people who don't have English as their second language or English as their primary language would use that, which, you know, I would rather go after the real phrase, which is the singular version than the plural, and ignore the plural. So easier to win on, yes. Is it my target demographic? No, because let's assume that I sell in the U.S., so that I definitely know that is not going to be advantageous for us because we would be getting a lot of foreign traffic and not domestic traffic. So that's not focused. Now the next one, ERP for small business, low search volume, 480. High pay-per-click rate. It's medium relevance because we're going to assume that I make ERP software for both small business and medium business or enterprise level clients, right? So it's not as specific because it's only part of my target demographic, but I'm still going to go after it because really it is part of my target demographic and it would make a great blog post. And I'm giving an example of the URL that I would use. So this spreadsheet, what you're seeing here for just 5 rows, really would be for hundreds of rows. And when you have a large website, you are going to have a very large spreadsheet like that. When you have a small website, it's probably going to be 50, you know, with a local geographic presence. But again, this is starting to create the flow of the website and the direction that you take. And then notice I have a column here for existing or new. Why I have this is for both myself and for clients. It allows me to sort the spreadsheet to say, okay, what's existing that we just need to go update and what's new content that we need to write. And for that new content that we need to write, now we need to make sure that we've got a plan to do that. For us in Web Savvy, that means that we're assigning to-do items for the client to say, hey, here's all the new pieces of content you need to write. Someone on your team needs to write, and we're going to optimize. But it helps you create a plan. Okay, so rule number 5 is find your sweet spot and master it like no other. And by sweet spot, I'm going to go back to this search volume. I'm talking about this little column right here. Every website has a search volume sweet spot. I didn't realize that till probably about 4 years ago. And what really taught me that information, and was a great example of why it just kind of hit me in the face that I've got a sweet spot and so do other sites, is the theme store, right? I knew that if I targeted certain types of phrases for our WordPress themes, I could hit page 1 within a certain amount of time, and it was a very short amount of time. And it was just based on the nature of the product, of the competition, and the search volume. So I would make sure when we were creating those themes, and you'll see them in our store, that we stayed on our sweet spot, because it was much easier for me to go after that, and I could hit on page 1 without a ton of work on my part, and I would get my money back for all that we spent developing that theme. You have a sweet spot. Your clients have a sweet spot. It's just going to take you a little bit to figure out what that sweet spot is. So keep that in mind as you are looking at keywords and mapping with your clients, because once you find it, your life's going to be a whole lot easier. Okay, so with my process, similar to what we talked about the rest of the week, it's through data. That you're going to get success through data. First, you got a plan. You're going to brainstorm your keywords. You're going to take a step back, and you're going to look at the overall strategy, and then you're going to force yourself to not jump ahead, right? Don't jump ahead to writing content. Don't jump ahead to planning content with your client. Start just by planning. Start by developing that seed list and brainstorming. And then once you have a really good seed list, move on to research. Research those keyword volumes. Start scoring those keywords. Assign them to content. Validate them in the search engine results page to see what you could potentially win on. And then once you have some good focus and you've got some good data within your spreadsheet, now start mapping that to your website, right? Decide what you're going to apply to existing content, and you're going to have to probably update that content for sure, but what new content that you need to write. Divide it into products and service pages and posts and other areas that you can really have some focus and map out your future, because once you have that map, things become very clear and they become much easier for you to execute. Okay, so in case you were not with us for days 1 or 2, I want to go through just real quick and recap the formula that I gave you on day 1. You're going to see what we covered today is 1 and 2. It's items 1 and 2, right? And I wanted to dedicate a whole day to them because I really feel they're important. That this topic today came after yesterday's, which was the free tools, because you need those free tools to be able to successfully pull off number 1 and 2, right? But this is the process. Once you've gotten to stage 2, now you get to start writing your content. And I talked about on day 1 where people always fail in SEO is because they jump straight to number 3 and they start writing their content. Don't do that. Take the time to walk through what I did today, even though you are going to find some points in the process very, very painful. After we optimize our content and write it, we're going to build those internal links. We're going to share it on social. We're going to build offsite authority. And then we're going to come back and we're going to let time pass and we're going to check our ranking progress either inside Google or inside the Search Console information, where you can actually really see where Google thinks they're ranking you across the various types of search output it produces. And then you're going to reverse engineer what you've done right so you can document it and optimize the other content to make sure you're repeating that same success. And just as a recap, which today's information falls into this, my keys to success, which are the 3 buckets of research and planning, create and optimize, and then strengthen your process. They all go together and it all creates a very cohesive SEO process and strategy that helps you win. Okay, so I've gone through my data. I left 15 minutes for questions and answers like I've done on Monday, Tuesday. So now, Corey, I want to turn it over to you and see what kind of questions people have in regards to the keyword mapping or keyword research and mapping process.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, you are a machine. Timed that perfectly to leave some time for a Q&A, and I know people have tons of Q&A, so be sure to post your questions now that we're at the end of the presentation. Post your questions in the chat room. I'll try to filter those up as best as possible. I mean, we have 300 people just in the chat room alone, so this is kind of crazy, Rebecca.
Yeah, Corey, there's one that I saw right away as I just hit my refresh, which talks about content silos. And I did omit that in the presentation, and that was totally an error on my part. So a content silo is a section of your website that is dedicated to a specific topic. So in my example I gave you, ERP software was a page we were going to have, and it had very heavy search. So it was like 49,000 searches per month. A content silo, you could create a content silo of ERP software, and that page could have children pages underneath it, which help build up this silo of content. So to the person that answered that question, yes, I absolutely do use silos. I encourage clients to use silos where we have larger websites and we have higher competitive areas that we're working within. I've been using content silos for about 10 years, and I really strongly do believe in them. And while they don't fit every situation, where they do fit a good situation, I think that they're very important. Great question, by the way, whoever asked that.
Yeah, and if you see others, Rebecca, you're welcome to it. By the way, so you know, I told her for the first 2 days, don't even look at the chat room because it could be really distracting. I'll try to filter some off. So she broke my guidance and looked.
I'm a rule breaker. I can't help it.
Hey, so before I forget, I want to make sure you know, I just put a link to Rebecca's Twitter profile. Make sure you tweet her out, say thank you, and hashtag SEO week. That's always good when you're presenting for free, essentially, this entire week for you guys. She's unloading some very good content for you, so I hope you thank her and online work her way as well. Okay, so one of the questions that came up, Rebecca, was around optimization of location, city, state. How would that fit into the spreadsheet?
So, okay, yes, perfect question, excellent. So when we have somebody who is locally focused, right, so they are dealing, I live in Michigan, so let's say they're in the Detroit area, right, and they service the suburbs around Detroit. I do put that into the spreadsheet, but I also put that into a different tab. So anything that's a localized search phrase that has city and state or county even, I move those to a separate tab, and we do consider them and we do use them in optimization. However, I don't solely rely on that because, again, that's areas where Google's not showing you all of that data in the keywords tool, right? And here's an example, is because people may search for divorce lawyer Detroit, or they just might search for divorce lawyer, and Google knows where that search is at, and it automatically produces localized results, right? So I don't solely rely on that. But when you do optimize for it, it is important to make sure that you are, if you're locally focused, make sure your footer or your header has your local area information in it. Don't rely on an 800 number. Use the area code so the search engines can associate that area code to your local area and use that in search. And please, oh please, do not fill your pages with all your local search terms, because that is old school SEO and you don't need to do that anymore.
Someone just asked, have you written a book? If not, could you? And I want you guys to know, for the past couple of weeks when we've been putting this together, I've been prodding her about, I knew how much impact in her process and everything is going to make a difference for what we're doing at iteams.com. I was like, you know, let's do this week, see what kind of demand is there. But I've been prodding her to say, you got to take everything she did, because you're seeing a glimpse of this. It's awesome stuff, but her whole process that she's refined over 10 plus years of doing this is freaking incredible. So I've been pushing her for a book, a full-on deep course, all that kind of stuff, by the way. So let me see if I can push her in that direction after the first year and see if she can take some time from her busy agency to do something like that. So see, there's +2 already, Rebecca, in that category.
I love it.
Okay, so here's one's kind of curious. I'm kind of curious about too. Any thoughts, SEO evaluation on the new TLDs? Does having a .com versus .party, .guru actually have a Google preference, in your opinion?
I don't think that it does yet, and I will question whether it does moving forward. I know that when the .nets and the .orgs were all getting used, right, years ago, that .com still seemed to have more weight. And I tend to go after .com and encourage clients to use .coms because I think it is more natural for the normal user, right? I mean, we're nerds, but not everybody's nerds like us, and those extensions can confuse people. So do I place weight on them? No, not right now, I don't.
Gotcha. Okay, here. Okay, aluminum versus aluminum, British versus American spelling. That came up one of the questions.
Excellent. The answer is, where are you located and who's your target demographic, right? So if I'm in the U.S. and I am targeting visitors in the U.S., I'm going to use the U.S. version. If I am overseas in the UK and I'm targeting visitors in the UK, I'm going to use the UK version.
Okay. Alt tags for images. There was a couple questions that, as I was scrolling up there, people had about like using a plugin for that, putting keywords in alt tags. But could you dig just a little deeper on the alt tags for images?
Yes. So alt tags for images are good. I like to have the keyword, if possible, in the file name, but it has to be natural, right? I mean, the search engines are way too savvy and smart to allow you to just flood image file names and image alt tags with keywords. So for example, if my page is about ERP software and I'm showing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in an image, I cannot use ERP software in my peanut butter and jelly sandwich image file name or alt tag because it's not going to make sense. It looks like keyword stuffing, right? So yes, it is great to be able to have a keyword in your image text as well as the file name, but it has to be natural when used.
Okay, so someone asked which is better, www.domain or just the domain without the www part?
From everything I've read, there is no difference. Someone may come up and tell me that I'm wrong, and I would love them to point me to that piece of data from the search engines, but I have not found anything that says one is over the other. In fact, everything I've ever read, they're both fine.
What about like from the search snippet? Being able to take back those four characters really.
Yeah, to me, I don't. There's so many other fish to fry, right? I mean, there's other things for you to focus on than that because now you're getting into minutia. Unless you've got everything else, perfect. That's the old joke with my boss had was people will spend $100 chasing pennies. It's just that's not where you should be focusing.
Gotcha. See, you guys are getting to hear some of the banter back and forth that she gave me as she was working with us, and still is, by the way, working with us. Corey, focus on the priorities. Okay, I'm looking up here for a minute real quick. Okay, what if you sell brand name products like a furniture store sells Ashley Furniture, which has big name recognition? Would it be good to try it to optimize for local search on the term Ashley Furniture?
That's a great question, and the great part about that is that goes against my don't optimize for branded terms, because in that case, if you are a local store selling Ashley Furniture, or a distributor of Ashley Furniture, you do want to optimize for those terms, but you want to make sure that you have longer tail phrases that use Ashley Furniture and that is going to be pertaining to the person that's looking for you specifically. So it could be Ashley Furniture Store, it could be the Ashley Furniture with your local geography. There's different variations, right? So yes, those would be great phrases to focus on, without question.
What's your feeling about using trending terms, phrases from social media, etc., as a research source or ideas for keywords?
I do like it. Yes, yeah. I think social media is a great place to look. For newer emerging phrases, right? Blog post articles for very well-respected magazines, that also a great place to look. But the thing to keep in mind is when you're researching what the keyword volumes are of those, they're going to be low, right? So don't let that dissuade you if it is a new emerging term. Okay.
How valuable is SEO for nonprofit websites compared to sites that actually sell a product?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Does the nonprofit want anyone to ever come to their website? If they do, SEO is of value. And I did recently do an audit for a friend of mine who has a nonprofit website, and that's something that they're struggling with because they have this wonderful product or service offering that they have in their nonprofit, and they're putting it out there, but they're not getting the exposure that they want because nobody knows of them, right? So you either have to go and do a big PR outreach with public relations and off-site branding, or you need to work on SEO, or you need to target social media. But I don't know of any nonprofit that doesn't want more people to know about them and to come visit them and learn more about what they do. So SEO is important.
Yeah, nonprofits have a different kind of customer. They're often called donors.
Yes, yes.
And also the actual participants of the nonprofit, whoever it's trying to affect. Okay, I have a really high ranking and get a lot of traffic on a phrase that is not really relevant for my business. This creates a higher bounce rate for my site. Any advice on what I should do?
I wouldn't get rid of it. I mean, if it's coming in, if you've got traffic coming in, but what I would think about is, because that you've got traffic and a lot of traffic coming into that phrase, how can you better design the page that they're landing on to get the right people to the content that you want them to see, right? So it's not necessarily about the search, it's about the user experience, and how can you manipulate that user experience to really route people to their proper destination, and to make sure that the people you want to stick on the site stick on the site.
Okay, I'll let you take a breath and get a drink of water, because you've been going for an hour and we've just been pinging you with questions. So while she does that, I'm going to let you know about tomorrow is the last day for SEO week, day 4, and she's going to be talking about how to basically wrap SEO services into your web design business. Now, she's been just talking about her unique process that she fulfills for clients that can be used if you're just a blogger or have your own website and do your own SEO, or someone that sells SEO services to your clients. And so you'll want to be sure to tap into that tomorrow if you can. Just a little bit of housekeeping as well. Underneath this chat room at ithinkchat.com, and if you're listening to my voice, you're on the email list that will get the links to the replays and slides afterwards. So never fear, those are coming. And then, okay, so here's a question for you, Rebecca. It says, you keep saying don't be greedy with your keywords, and pick keywords that are more specifically targeted to your audience. So if you're an agency like you, how in the world do you differentiate yourselves from the next when we all do essentially the same thing? We all do design, code, market websites for people and companies. So thoughts on how to, as you're going after potentially the same keywords, or what is your approach as an agency owner?
It's important to really figure out where your niche is, and whatever that niche might be, right? Everybody's got something that sets them apart. What is it that when you're on a sales call with somebody and they say to you, what makes you different from Joe down the street? There's something you say back, right, that will help highlight what is special about you, your firm, your talents. Utilize that when you're thinking about search terms. For us, when we first started, it was SEO and it was Genesis, right? That's what set us apart. Now we have industries that people will come to us because we've done a lot of work in a certain industry, like a credit union or a university. So there's different routes that you can go, and honestly, if you have no differentiators, then you got a bigger problem than just SEO, because there's got to be something about you that makes you special to help you sell, right? And if you don't have anything, you got to find that within yourself, because there is something special about you. There's something special in everybody.
Okay, this will be the last question for today, but I also chatted the link to the forum where you can post questions there, and we'll try to figure out how we can try to either do training in the future or answer those in some way, shape, or form. But post your question if it didn't get asked today, and with 300 people in the chat and even more on the webinar, it's kind of hard to get to everybody, of course. This is why Rebecca is in demand, by the way. Last question, and because I know it's one you and I have talked about specifically, do you use tags and categories? And if so, how do you wrap that into the silo?
So tags and categories are a big pet peeve of mine, because people let their tags and categories compete with all of their pages and posts and products, and it drives me insane, because it is something that you need to fix, right? You do not want your blog categories and your blog tags, or even your product categories and tags, to compete with your other content, and they do. You can optimize blog categories and you can optimize blog tags to land in search. I have a blog category that I get quite a bit of traffic from, and it's very relevant traffic to what I do. But guess what I did is I made sure it did not compete with my other core pages in the website or my products. So you do need to do audits of those. I recommend that you do audits, I would say like every 3 to 6 months, because categories, particularly tags, can just spiral out of control if you write a lot of content. And very well-known people in our industry do not follow that, and they have lots of competing against content within their own website, as well as large firms. So fine-tune that, right? Tags and categories should be part of your mapping process, your keyword discovery, and it's something that you should audit on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Wow, look at that. You hit it right at 2 p.m. Now, you guys know Rebecca leads a very busy firm called Web Savvy Marketing. We put links in there. But I'm going to put her Twitter profile and the hashtag to say thank you to her. If you're on the email list, you'll get the replay links and the slides. But be sure to say that thanks to her publicly and acknowledge her as expert she is, taking some valuable time. She's juggling, by the way, some big projects right now while she does this series. So, but again, I've been prodding her for next steps, going, people want more, people want to go deeper. You're the person to provide this. So, by the way, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll have our fourth and final webinar talking about how to wrap these SEO tactics and strategies and planning and focusing all this stuff into services that you can sell to your clients to help them go bigger and better. Anyway, thank you, Rebecca, for another great webinar, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
My pleasure. Thank you.